She was only 4 feet tall and lived in a world where size meant power and power meant everything. So from the day she was born, her life was a struggle. Her people believed the strong should lead and the tall should be admired while the small ones were left behind in shadows, forgotten or ignored. So she grew up in silence, watching others tower over her, laughing at her height, whispering that she would never be chosen for companionship, never be trusted for leadership, and never know what love felt like, because who could ever love someone so small in a society where strength was measured by height alone? Every morning she walked through the great markets of her city, with her head down, pretending not to hear the cruel jokes that followed her steps. When the tall ones passed, they looked over her as if she was invisible, and when she tried to speak, her voice was drowned out by louder, stronger voices, until she stopped trying at all and chose instead to hide inside her own heart. She wanted to believe there was more to life than cruel eyes and harsh words, but hope had grown thin like water slipping through her hands. In her quiet heart, she dreamed of someone who might see her differently, someone who might notice that though her body was small, her spirit was not. But each day that dream felt further away, as if even the stars in the sky laughed at her secret wish. She began to believe she would live her life alone, unchosen, unloved, unseen. Then the human came. The day he arrived, the city streets were filled with whispers, for it was rare for a human to travel so far into their lands. Most thought humans were fragile creatures, too weak, too slow, too soft to survive among warriors and rulers. Yet there he stood among them, taller than her, but still shorter than many of her kind. His frame looked less powerful, but his eyes were different. They carried something strange, something that was not fear and not arrogance, but a kind of calm strength that made people look twice. She noticed him before anyone else did. She was standing near the market wall, hiding as usual. When her gaze caught his, he was looking around with quiet curiosity, as if he did not care that many eyes were on him. And for one brief moment, his eyes landed on her small figure pressed against the stones. He did not laugh. He did not sneer. He only gave a small nod, like he saw her, like she was worth noticing, and her heart skipped in shock. That simple moment would not leave her mind. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, that he was only being polite, that he did not mean anything at all. But still, it stayed with her for days, echoing in her chest. She wondered what it would be like to speak to him, but fear held her back, because what if he turned out like the others? What if his kindness was only an accident, and she was foolish to believe otherwise? But fate did not let her hide long. One evening, as the sun turned the sky red, she walked near the quiet training grounds where she often went to avoid the noise of the market, and there she saw him again. The human was alone, sitting by the stone, sketching something in the dirt with a stick. She froze, not knowing if she should leave yet. He looked up, and this time he smiled. Not the cruel kind of smile she was used to, but warm and gentle. "You are always alone," he said in a soft voice that carried no judgment, only observation. She felt her throat tighten. Words refused to come, but she forced herself to answer. "It is better this way." "Better?" he asked, tilting his head with curiosity. "Or safer?" No one had ever asked her that before. The question broke through the wall she had built around her, and though she wanted to stay silent, she found herself whispering, "Both." He said nothing more, only patted the stone beside him, inviting her to sit. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt like a risk to take. She hesitated, heart racing, then slowly moved closer and sat down, keeping space between them, as if space might protect her from disappointment. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fading light. She waited for the moment he would laugh at her size or call her weak, but it never came. Instead, he asked her name, and when she gave it, he repeated it softly, as if it mattered, as if it belonged in the air, with respect. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. From that evening, their paths began to cross more often, sometimes at the market, sometimes by the training ground, sometimes in hidden places where no one paid attention. He spoke to her like she was equal, not smaller, not weaker, just another soul with thoughts worth hearing. And each time they spoke, she felt something growing inside her, a fragile spark she did not dare name hope, yet fear lingered in her heart. She knew if her people saw them together, they would mock her even more, perhaps. Even punish her for wasting time with a human they already whispered that humans were weak outsiders unfit to stand among them. And if they discovered she was close to one, their cruelty would double. She told herself to be careful to guard her heart, to remember that dreams were dangerous for someone like her. But dreams are stubborn things, they grow even in dark soil, and each day she found herself waiting for the next time she would see him, wondering what he would say next, wondering if his eyes would still hold that strange calm strength that had shaken her world the first time they met. She did not know what future waited for her, only that something had begun, something she could not stop, something that terrified her as much as it thrilled. Here in the quiet of her small home that night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to herself, "Why does he see me?" It was not a question she could answer, but the mystery itself felt like the first real gift her life had ever given her. The small girl had always thought her life would pass in silence, but after meeting the human, her days began to feel different. She woke each morning with a strange feeling in her chest, as if something important waited for her, something she could not yet name. When she walked through the crowded streets, she no longer only kept her eyes on the ground, she found herself searching for him. Even though she told herself it was foolish, still she hoped to see him again, because he was the only one who looked at her without mockery, the only one who made her feel like she belonged. It was not long before their paths crossed again, this time at the edge of the river that cut through the city. She had gone there to be alone, to listen to the water and escape the cruel voices that haunted her every step. But he was already there, kneeling by the water, his hands touching the current, as if he found peace in it. When he saw her, he did not chase her away. Instead, he greeted her softly, as though he had been waiting for her. She wanted to leave, but her feet refused to move, and soon she stood beside him. They spoke little at first, but even silence with him felt different. Unlike with others, she did not feel invisible beside him. Her presence mattered somehow. He asked her about her life, and though she tried to give short answers, he kept listening. With gentle patience, he asked why she always stayed away from others, and she told him the truth, that she was too small to matter, too weak to be respected, too different to ever be wanted. He listened without laughing, and when she finished, he said quietly, "You are not weak. I see more strength in you than in many who stand taller." Those words stayed in her heart like fire. She wanted to believe him, but years of cruelty had built walls inside her, and though his kindness touched her, she feared it was a dream that would vanish if she trusted it too much. Still, she returned to the river the next evening, and he was there again, waiting. This time, he told her stories about his people, how humans were often seen as fragile by other races, but how they had survived countless struggles, not with size or strength, but with determination and courage. His stories amazed her. She had never heard anyone speak of survival in that way. Her people measured worth by physical power alone, yet he spoke of cleverness, endurance, heart, and the will to keep standing, even when all odds were against them. His voice carried quiet conviction, and she began to see him not as weak, but as something entirely different, something her people could not understand, but something she admired deeply. Night after night, they met in secret places, sometimes by the river, sometimes in the quiet gardens where no one else went, sometimes near the old stone walls where shadows gave them privacy. Each meeting wove a new thread between them, and though they never spoke of what they were building, she felt it growing stronger, like an invisible bond. She began to laugh softly at his jokes, something she had not done in years, and sometimes she caught herself smiling when she thought of him, even when he was not there. But shadows are never free of danger. Whispers began to rise in the city. Some of her people noticed the human wandering alone, and they muttered that he did not belong. Some called him weak, some called him a burden, some said he would bring shame to whoever stood with him. She heard these words, and fear gripped her heart, because she knew if anyone discovered how much time she spent with him, she would become an even greater target for cruelty. One evening, she told him of her fears. She said, "They cannot see me with you. If they find out, they will destroy me, and maybe you too." But he only looked at her with calm eyes and said, "Let them talk. They do not know me. They do not know you, we are more than their words. She wanted to believe, but the fear of being cast out completely weighed heavy. Still, she did not stop seeing him, because the thought of losing their bond hurt more than the thought of cruel words. Days turned into weeks, and with each meeting her heart changed. She began to feel something she had never felt before. She began to long for his presence, not only for kindness, but for the way he listened, the way he respected her, the way he made her feel strong instead of small. One night, when he told her about the courage of his ancestors, she looked at him and felt a strange ache in her chest. Something powerful and frightening. It was not just friendship anymore, it was something deeper. Something she dared not name, because love was something she believed she could never have. The suspense of their secret bond grew heavier. She could feel eyes on her whenever she left her home, as if someone was starting to notice her disappearances. She feared what would happen if her people discovered the truth, but even fear could not keep her away from him, because every time they met, the shadows of her loneliness faded a little more, and every time he spoke, she felt stronger, more alive. Yet danger was closer than she thought. One evening, as they met by the stone walls, a figure stood watching them from afar, hidden in the darkness. She did not notice, but the rival who had mocked her many times before saw everything. His eyes burned with cruel delight, and he whispered to himself, "So this is where the small one hides. This is the weakness she clings to, a human, the weakest of all. I will show them what a mistake she has made." The rival left silently, planning what he would do, and she remained unaware, laughing softly at something the human said, her heart filled with warmth, not knowing that shadows of betrayal and danger were already gathering around them. She thought she had found a small corner of peace, but fate was already turning, and soon she would learn that love, even love she thought impossible, always demands a cost. That night, when she returned home, she lay awake once again, whispering to herself questions she could not answer. Why does he see me? Why does he stay near me? What does he risk by standing at my side? She closed her eyes, but sleep did not come, because though her heart was filled with hope, her soul trembled with fear, as if it already knew that soon everything would change. The small girl had never known days that felt so bright. She walked through the city, and even though the same cruel whispers followed her, she no longer felt crushed under their weight, because deep inside she carried a secret light. The human had given her that light was not something she could show, but it lived in her chest, keeping her warm. When the world turned cold, she told herself again and again to be careful, to stay hidden, to guard their bond. Yet each time she saw him, she forgot her fear for a little while. But shadows had already begun to gather. The rival who had always mocked her noticed the way she slipped away from others. He had seen her with the human near the stone walls, and his heart twisted with malice. He had always enjoyed reminding her of her smallness, and now he had found something even sharper to use against her. He told himself that exposing her weakness would give him power in the eyes of the people, and he could not resist the chance. It happened one afternoon in the training square, where many gathered to watch contests of strength. She had gone there only to pass quickly through, but the rival stepped forward, blocking her way, his voice loud enough for everyone around to hear. "So the small one thinks she is better than you," she said, his eyes gleaming. "She thinks she can hide, but I know her secret." She froze, fear cutting through her like a blade. He smiled cruelly and turned to the crowd. "She has been meeting with a human," he said with venom. "She hides with him in shadows. She lets weakness walk beside her." The words spread through the crowd like fire. Some laughed. Others looked at her with disgust. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Her heart pounded and she wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Shame and fear tangled inside her. Then, before she could speak, another voice rose. It was him, the human. He had been nearby, and when he heard the cruel words, he stepped forward into the circle of eyes. "Enough," he said, his voice steady though quieter than the rival's. "Enough of mocking her, enough of pretending that height makes worth. She has more courage than any of you." Square went silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter, cruel and sharp. Some jeered at the human, saying he was weak, unworthy, foolish for defending someone so small. The rival sneered, stepping closer. So the human dares to defend her. You dare speak against us. You are nothing. She felt her chest twist in terror. She wanted him to stop, to leave before it grew worse. But he did not step back. He held his ground and looked directly at the rival, his eyes calm but burning with something she could not name. He said, "She is not nothing. She is not weak. And if you wish to challenge someone, then challenge me." The square gasped at those words. The rival laughed loudly, a harsh sound that cut the air. "You think you can stand against me, you fragile creature? You cannot even lift what we lift. You cannot fight as we fight. You will fall in seconds." The crowd murmured with cruel excitement, already certain of the outcome, but the human did not waver. She felt her heart racing, fear choking her, because she knew the rival's strength. He was tall, powerful, trained in combat, while the human, though brave, had no chance against such force. She wanted to cry out, to beg him not to do this, to beg him not to risk himself for her. But the words stuck in her throat. She could only watch as the challenge was set and the crowd gathered closer, eager for a spectacle. The rival raised his head proudly, declaring, "Tomorrow at the first light, we will fight before all who wish to see. Then we will know what becomes of the small one and her weak protector." The crowd cheered, and voices rose in excitement. The human only nodded quietly, then walked away, leaving her trembling in the square, with eyes burning into her back. She hurried after him, desperate to speak, when she caught up to him in the empty street. She cried, "You should not have done this. You will be hurt. You will be broken." He stopped and looked at her, his face calm, his eyes steady. He said, "I could not stand there and let them tear you apart with words. They call me weak, but I will show them that courage is strength, even if I fall." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "I never asked you to risk your life for me. I cannot lose the only one who sees me." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder and said softly, "You are worth the risk." Those words struck her heart deeper than any blade. She wanted to beg him again to stop, but she saw that his decision was set, and nothing she said could change it. The night passed in torment. She lay awake, her mind filled with fear, imagining the rival's fists breaking the human, imagining him lying broken in the dust. Because of her, because of the bond she had allowed to grow, she whispered again and again, "Please do not take him from me." Morning came too soon. The square was filled with people eager for the fight. Voices rose like thunder as the rival stepped forward, proud and strong, muscles tense with anticipation. The human stood across from him, smaller, less powerful, but his eyes steady, his back straight. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Every part of her wanted to run forward, to stop it, to shield him somehow, but she could not move. She could only watch. The rival laughed loudly and raised his arms, ready to strike. The human did not flinch. The crowd roared with hunger for blood, and in that moment she realized that no matter what happened, nothing would be the same again. She had wished for someone to see her, and now someone had, but the cost of that wish might be more than her heart could bear. The air in the square felt heavy as the sun rose, casting long shadows across the stone ground. The people gathered close, their voices loud with excitement, as if this was only sport for them. But for her it was not a game. It was her heart standing in the circle, and she felt it breaking with fear. The rival stood tall, his body strong and proud, his grin cruel, as he looked at the human who waited calmly across from him. The difference between them was clear to everyone. One was powerful, trained, and merciless. The other was smaller, with less muscle and no reputation. Yet the human did not look afraid. She stood at the edge of the circle, her hands shaking, her chest burning with every breath. She wanted to run forward, to pull him away, but she knew it was already too late. The crowd wanted blood, and the rival would never back down. The fight began with the sound of the rival's laugh. He charged forward with speed, his fist cutting the air like a blade. The human stepped aside, barely in time. The crowd shouted in surprise. Some laughed, some jeered, but he kept moving, light on his feet, refusing to meet power with power. Instead, he dodged and deflected, letting the rival grow angrier with each miss. For a moment, hope sparked in her chest. Maybe he could last longer than she feared. Maybe his courage and quick steps could keep him safe. But the rival was relentless. Blow after blow came harder and faster, and though the human avoided Many strikes landed, each one drawing gasps from the crowd. He staggered once, blood on his lip, but his eyes did not break. His gaze stayed firm on his opponent, as if courage alone held him upright. She felt tears rise in her eyes, watching him refuse to fall. Rival shouted with fury, calling him weak, mocking him with every strike, saying, "You cannot win, human. You are nothing, you are only flesh." That will break. His fists slammed into the ground near the human, who rolled away, his body straining from the effort. But he still rose to his feet and answered with a voice steady and calm, saying, "Strength is not only in muscle, it is in heart, it is in will, it is in the choice to stand even when standing hurts." The words carried across the crowd, and for the first time whispers rose, not of laughter but of thought. The rival grew angrier, his pride burning. He rushed forward with a brutal blow, aimed not to test, but to finish the fight. She saw it coming. Her heart froze. She wanted to scream, but no sound left her throat. The human saw it too, but instead of stepping back, he did something no one expected. He moved toward her. The rival's strike meant for her body. Standing on the edge of the circle, the human threw himself in its path. The force struck him hard, sending him to the ground. The square went silent. Her scream tore through the air as she ran to him, falling to her knees by his side. His body bruised, blood staining his skin, but his hand reached weakly for hers. She grabbed it, shaking, crying, begging, "Do not leave me, please, you cannot leave me." His lips moved, forming words faint but clear. "I will not let them hurt you. You matter more than my life." Her tears fell on his face as she held him close, her heart breaking open in front of the watching crowd. The rival stood shocked for a moment, the laughter gone from his mouth. The people who had come to mock were silent now, for they had seen something no one expected. They had seen a human risk his life without hesitation to protect someone their own kind had called worthless. The silence turned to whispers, and the whispers grew to a rumble, spreading through the crowd. "Courage," they said. "Sacrifice," they said. "He is weak in body, but not in spirit." She did not care for the whispers. Her only world was the broken body in her arms. She begged him to rise, begged him not to leave her, her voice raw with pain. For the first time she no longer cared if they all saw her heart. She no longer cared about shame or mockery. All she cared about was him. She whispered, "You cannot die. You are the only one who ever saw me, the only one who ever made me feel alive. You are my heart, my hope. Please do not go." Her cries reached even the rival, who lowered his fists, his pride wounded not by defeat in combat, but by something greater. The crowd no longer looked at him with admiration. They looked at the human with awe. He had won something more powerful than victory. He had won their respect through sacrifice. The rival turned away, his face twisted with anger, but inside he knew the truth. He could not break what had been shown today. Human tried to rise, his body shaking. He whispered softly to her, "Do not cry. You are not small to me. You are everything." She held him tighter, her tears falling faster than her words. She could not stop the trembling in her chest, her fear that he would slip away in her arms. But even as pain covered his face, his eyes were still filled with calm strength. He had given everything for her, and in that moment she understood the truth. She had spent her whole life believing she was unworthy of love, but love had found her in the most impossible way. The sun rose higher. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring still about what they had seen, some with disbelief, some with newfound respect. But she did not hear them. She only stayed by his side, refusing to let go of his hand, her heart beating with fear and hope tangled together. She knew his fight was not yet over. He was alive but weak, and tomorrow might still steal him away. But she also knew that even if the world mocked her again, she would never hide her heart again. She would stand with him, because he had given everything to stand for her. The square was almost empty. Now the crowd had gone, but whispers still hung in the air like smoke. People would not forget what they had seen, a human standing against one of their strongest warriors, and taking a blow meant for someone everyone had called worthless. It was a memory that would not fade easily. Yet for her, none of that mattered. All she could see was him lying weak against the cold stones, his chest rising slowly with every breath, his hand still holding hers, as if afraid that if he let go she might vanish. She stayed beside him, refusing to move even when some came to tell her it was foolish to waste her tears on him. She turned her head away from their words, because for the first time in her life, she knew exactly what her heart wanted. And nothing could take it from her. She whispered to him again and again, "Do not leave me, stay with me. Please, you are my strength. You are my only light." His eyes opened weakly, and though his lips were pale, he smiled faintly, saying, "I told you, you are worth the risk." Those words struck her heart with such power. She could not hold back the tears. Through the night she cared for him in silence. She brought water to cool his lips. She cleaned the wounds with trembling hands. She spoke to him in whispers, telling him things she had never said to anyone, that she had always felt invisible, that she had always thought she would never be loved, that she had always believed her sighs made her unworthy, but he had proven her wrong by seeing her, by standing for her, by risking everything. She confessed with a shaking voice, "I thought I was too small for love, but you showed me I was wrong." As dawn broke, the human slowly sat up, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. When he tried to stand, she placed her arms around him, helping him rise, her small frame supporting his larger body, and though it looked impossible, she carried him step by step to her home, where she could watch over him in peace. Every step was heavy, but her heart was stronger than her limbs. For the first time, she was not ashamed of her small size, because it was her strength, holding him now not in muscle, but in devotion. Days passed, and slowly he began to heal. The bruises faded, the wounds closed, his strength returned, little by little, and during those days they spoke more deeply than ever before. He told her of his people, how they had always been underestimated by others, yet survived with courage and will. He told her how he had seen her hiding in the shadows the first day and thought she was the bravest soul he had ever met, because despite all the cruelty she still endured. She listened with tears in her eyes, for no one had ever spoken of her with such respect. But the city was changing too. Whispers spread of what had happened in the square. Some spoke with shame, saying they had misjudged her. Others spoke with awe of the human who had faced death without fear, for someone so small and unvalued. Slowly the cruel laughter that had followed her all her life began to fade, replaced by curious glances and uncertain respect. For the first time, she walked through the streets without lowering her head, and though some still mocked, most stayed silent, because deep down they had seen something they could not deny. One evening, as the sky turned gold, she and the human walked together through the quiet river path, the same place where their bond had begun. She stopped and looked at him, her heart racing. She said softly, "You nearly gave your life for me. Why would you do that?" He looked at her with gentle eyes and answered, "Because from the first moment I saw you, I knew you were not small. You were strong in ways they cannot see. You were the bravest heart I had ever met, and I could not let them take you from this world." Her tears came again, but this time they were not of pain. They were of release, of finally believing what she had long thought impossible. She reached for his hand, holding it tight, and whispered, "Then hear me. Now I love you. I thought I would never speak these words in my life, but I love you more than I ever thought I could." He pulled her close, his voice trembling with emotion. "I love you too. You are not small to me. You are everything." The moment felt like the world had shifted. All the years of loneliness, all the weight of shame, all the cruel words from the past melted away, as if they had never been. For in his arms, she was no longer the small outcast. She was loved, she was chosen, she was free. Their bond was no longer hidden in shadows. It stood strong against the eyes of the world, and though the future was uncertain, they knew they would face it together. As days turned into weeks, their story became more than whispers. It became a lesson among her people, that strength was not only in muscle or height, but in courage and in love. The rival who had once mocked her could no longer raise his voice without hearing the murmurs of shame, for he had been defeated not by fists but by a heart stronger than pride. And for her, every step she took with the human by her side was proof that she had never been weak. She had only been waiting for the one who could see her truth. One night, as they stood beneath the stars, she looked up at the endless sky and remembered the girl She once was the girl who thought she would never know, love never be seen, never be more. Then small she smiled softly and whispered to herself, she was wrong, that girl was wrong, for love had found her, and it had come in the form of a human who risked everything to stand by her side. She turned to him, and he smiled at her, and in that smile she saw the life she had always dreamed of but never dared to believe was possible. And so the story closed not with loneliness, not with shame, but with love that had been tested by danger and proven stronger than fear. She had thought she would never know love until a human risked everything for her, and together they walked into a future where she was no longer the small forgotten girl. She was loved, she was valued, and she was free. The end.